September 1971, Almería, Spain. The desert here doesn't forgive anything. The sun rises at 5:45 and immediately begins its punishment. By 7 in the morning, the sand is already burning through the soles of your boots. The rocks are bleached white. The air smells like dust and dried grass and nothing else. There is no shade. There is no comfort. There is only the work. This is where they are shooting Chato's Land, a Western. Charles Bronson in the lead, a $4.2 million production. 78 crew members, drivers, grips, electricians, camera operators, sound technicians, makeup artists. Most of them hired locally from nearby villages in Andalusia. Men who earn less in a week than a Hollywood actor spends on lunch. Men who wake up at 4:30 in the morning to ride a production van across 40 kilometers of unpaved road so they can be ready. Lights set, cables run, cameras prepped, before the first light of day touches the desert floor. This is how Charles Bronson likes to run a set. Tight, disciplined, efficient. No waste, no prima donnas, no excuses. By 1971, Bronson is already a legend in Europe. In France, they call him Le Sacré Monstre, the sacred monster. In Italy, Il Bruto, the ugly one. Not insults, reverence. He is the #1 box office star on the continent, more popular than Clint Eastwood, more popular than Steve McQueen. American studios still don't fully understand what they have, but the crew members on his sets understand perfectly. They understand because he treats them like equals. He knows every grip's name. He eats the same food as the drivers. He arrives before the cameras roll and leaves after everyone else. He doesn't have a private chef. He doesn't have a reserved parking space. He has a chair, a script, and a face that makes grown men nervous. He protects his crew. That is the unspoken rule of a Bronson set. And then, in the third week of filming, a man named Richard Halsey arrives from London. Richard Halsey is the newly appointed line producer assigned by the British distribution company co-financing Chato's Land. He is 34 years old. He has a degree from the London School of Economics. He has produced 2 modestly successful British television films. He wears linen shirts in the Spanish desert and carries a leather-bound production notebook that he has never been seen writing in. The director, Michael Winner, has worked with difficult money men before, but he tells his first AD quietly the night before Halsey arrives. Watch this one. Halsey lands in Almería on a Tuesday. He is picked up in the production van, along with 3 other passengers, a camera assistant, a sound technician, and a local driver named Alejandro Garcia. Alejandro is 31 years old. He has worked on the production since day one. He drives the equipment van. He loads cable. He does whatever needs doing without being asked twice. He has a wife named Carmen, 2 children, a small house on the outskirts of Tabernas. He has not been home in 11 days because the shoot runs 6 days a week, and the single day off is spent sleeping. Halsey sits in the front seat of the van and spends the 40-minute drive on the phone with his office in London. He does not acknowledge Alejandro. He does not say good morning. When the van hits a pothole and Halsey spills coffee on his linen shirt, he turns to Alejandro and says, and the sound technician in the back seat hears every word, "Can you not drive like a peasant, please?" Alejandro says nothing. He keeps his eyes on the road. That evening, Halsey attends the production meeting. Director Michael Winner runs through the schedule. Bronson sits at the far end of the table, arms crossed, saying nothing, listening to everything. Halsey interrupts twice to ask about catering upgrade options for the producer's trailer. He refers to the local crew members as the locals 3 times in 20 minutes. After the meeting, Bronson finds Michael Winner outside. He says 4 words. "Who brought him here?" Winner explains the financing situation. Bronson nods once, says nothing else, goes to bed. He is watching. The following morning, 4:30 a.m., the production van leaves base camp in complete darkness. Alejandro is behind the wheel. 6 crew members packed in behind him. No one speaks. They are past the point of morning small talk. This is week 3. Everyone is running on coffee and routine. By 5:15, the equipment is unloaded at the location, a dry riverbed 6 kilometers from the main road. The gaffer runs cable across 60 meters of rocky ground. The camera operator sets the first position while the focus puller measures distances in the dark using a flashlight between his teeth. The sound technician plants his boom stand in the sand and checks his levels. Makeup is already working on a supporting actor in a folding chair. The morning light in Almería, that specific golden window between 6 and 7 a.m., is irreplaceable. It is the reason they chose this location. It casts long shadows across the desert floor and turns the dust in the air into something almost beautiful. You cannot manufacture it. You cannot reschedule it. It comes when it comes, and then it is gone. At 5:55, Bronson is in his chair, script in hand. He is already in character. He does not need a ritual. He does not need a process. He shows up and he works. At 6 a.m., the first AD calls for positions. Richard Halsey is not there. Not at his designated position beside the monitors. Not at the craft services table. Not walking across the sand toward them. The production van that was sent to pick him up at 6:15 yesterday delivered him back to his hotel at 8 p.m., and the same van was sent this morning at 5:30. The driver reports that Halsey answered the door in a hotel bathrobe, took one look at the van, and said he would be ready in 45 minutes. The 45 minutes pass, 50, 60. The morning light is peaking. Bronson watches the sky. He says nothing. At 7:10, the production van finally pulls up. Halsey steps out. He is wearing fresh linen. He has a coffee cup from the hotel in his hand. He walks toward the monitors without hurrying, without apology. He glances at the crew waiting in position and says, almost to himself, "Right. What are we doing first?" The grip nearest to Alejandro shifts his weight, checks his watch, says nothing. Bronson adjusts the chute. They move to a different scene that does not require Halsey's sign-off on budget approvals. They lose the morning light window. 1 hour and 15 minutes of irreplaceable desert gold gone. 78 people stood ready in the dark for nothing. That night, Bronson says nothing to Halsey. He is still watching. The next morning, 4:30 a.m. again. Alejandro loads the van in the dark. The same 6 crew members. The same route. The same unpaved road. The same 40 kilometers of nothing. When they arrive at the location, a different setup today, a canyon mouth 2 kilometers north, the gaffer is already running cable. The camera operator is setting the second position. The makeup artist is working by lantern light. At 6 a.m., the first AD calls for positions. Richard Halsey is not there. The production van driver radios in. Halsey is not answering his hotel room door. The first AD knocks on the hotel room door himself at 5:45. He can hear movement inside. Music. Halsey is awake. He simply is not coming out. At 6:50, Halsey appears. Different linen shirt, same coffee. He walks past the waiting crew without looking at them and goes directly to the monitors. He examines the shot framing, tilts his head and says, loud enough for 3 people to hear, "This light is terrible anyway. We would have wasted the morning on this." The gaffer, who has been running cable since 5 a.m., stares at the ground. Alejandro is standing 15 feet away loading a cable reel. His jaw is tight. He says nothing. That evening, Director Michael Winner approaches Bronson at the meal table. He speaks quietly. 2 mornings, significant delays both days. The first AD is frustrated. The local crew is furious. We need to address it. Bronson cuts a piece of bread, doesn't look up. Says, "One more morning." Winner waits for more. Nothing comes. Bronson eats his bread. One more morning. But here's the thing. That same evening, Bronson is walking back to his trailer when he passes Alejandro loading gear into the storage truck. He stops. They have spoken before. Brief exchanges, nods, the easy shorthand of men who operate in the same physical world without needing to narrate it. Bronson asks how long he has been on the production. 11 days straight, Alejandro says. No days home. Bronson asks where home is. Tabernas, 40 kilometers. Alejandro says it quietly, not a complaint, just a fact, the same way he says everything. Then he mentions in the same flat tone that it doesn't matter much right now anyway. There is no home to go back to. 3 nights ago, a cooking fire spread to the wall and burned the house. His wife and children are at her mother's. Everything is gone. He says it the way men from that place say things like that, without drama, without asking for anything. Bronson looks at him for a moment, then nods once, says goodnight, walks to his trailer. Alejandro loads the last cable reel and goes to sleep in the production van. The third morning. 4:15 a.m. Alejandro is behind the wheel before anyone else is awake. He has slept 4 hours. He drives the route he has driven 12 times now, without needing to think about it. The headlights cut through the Spanish dark. Beside him, the sound technician dozes against the window. By 5 a.m., the location is alive. Today is the biggest setup of the week. A wide canyon sequence requiring 3 camera positions, 40 extras in full costume, a controlled dust charge rigged by the special effects team, and a natural lighting window of no more than 90 minutes. The first AD has been here since 4:30. He has walked the positions twice. Everything is pre-lit, pre-marked, pre-planned. This scene represents approximately $80,000 of production time. It cannot be rescheduled. The extras are contracted for today only. At 5:55, every single one of the 78 crew members is at their position. Bronson is in his chair. He has not looked at Halsey's empty position by the monitors. He is reading his script. His face is completely still. At 6 a.m., the first AD calls for positions. Halsey's position is empty. The production van driver radios in at 6:05. Same story. Hotel room door? No answer. At 6:15, the first AD radios Bronson directly. "We're losing the light window, sir." Bronson sets down his script. He stands up. The entire crew watches. In 3 weeks of filming, Charles Bronson has never stood up from his director's chair to deal with a personnel issue. He directs from that chair. He acts from that mark. He moves between those 2 positions and no others. Seeing him rise now, slowly, with that particular stillness that precedes something final, the crew goes completely silent. The gaffer stops coiling cable. The camera operator takes his eye away from the viewfinder. Alejandro, 30 meters away, stands up straight. Bronson walks across the desert floor. 78 people watch him move. His boots make almost no sound on the sand. He is not walking fast. He is not walking slow. He is walking the way a man walks when the decision has already been made, and the only remaining task is delivery. He reaches the production van. He tells the driver to take him to the hotel. The driver does not ask questions. 6 minutes later, the van stops in front of the hotel entrance. Bronson gets out. He walks to the 3rd floor. Room 14. He knocks on the door. 3 knocks. Not loud, not soft, just 3 knocks with the specific gravity of a man who will not knock again. 30 seconds pass. The door opens. Richard Halsey stands there in his hotel bathrobe. He has a cup of tea. Behind him, the room is cool and dark. The curtains are drawn against the morning sun. There is a notebook open on the desk. His leather-bound production notebook, the one he never writes in, and a breakfast tray from room service. He looks at Bronson with mild surprise, then mild irritation at being disturbed. "We're ready for you," Bronson says. His voice is low, quiet, the kind of quiet that has no floor to it. Halsey sighs, the sigh of a man inconvenienced by logistics. "I was going to head over at 7. The morning light is unusable before 6:30 anyway, and the dust rig won't—" "What time was your call?" Bronson says. Halsey blinks. 6, but that's a guideline for crew. My role requires— "What time is it now?" Halsey glances at his watch. 6:22, but 78 people have been standing in that canyon since 5 a.m., Bronson says. The light window closes in 60 minutes. The extras are contracted until noon. The dust rig is pre-charged and cannot be reset today. A pause. Each word placed with the care of someone laying down something heavy. This is the 3rd morning. Halsey straightens slightly. He adopts the posture of a man who has decided to have a reasonable adult conversation about this. "Charles, I understand the frustration, but my function on this production is strategic oversight, not call sheet compliance. The creative and logistical value I bring requires a different kind of—" "You're finished," Bronson says. Halsey stops mid-sentence. His mouth stays open for a moment. "I beg you're finished on this production. There is a car downstairs. Pack your things. You have 30 minutes. The silence that follows is total. Halsey stares at him. He looks for something in Bronson's face. Anger, bluster, the kind of theatrical fury he could push back against. He finds nothing. Just 2 dark eyes and a face that has been looking at harder things than him since 1921. "You cannot fire me," Halsey says. His voice has gone thin. "I represent the financing partners. I have contractual standing that supersedes—" The director has authority over all on-set personnel, Bronson says. Michael Winner is aware. The production company has been called. Your financing partners will be contacted from the car. He takes one step back. 30 minutes. He turns. He walks back down the hallway. He does not look back. Downstairs, he gets in the production van. He tells the driver, back to the location. Then he is quiet for the entire 6-minute drive. When the van stops and he steps out onto the desert floor, 78 people are exactly where he left them, waiting. The morning light is still holding. He walks to his chair, he sits down, he picks up his script. He says to the first AD simply, "Let's not waste the morning." The crew erupts into motion. 38 minutes later, a taxi pulls out of the Hotel Costa Sol in Almería with Richard Halsey in the back seat. He has a suitcase. He has his leather-bound notebook. He has his phone, which he is already using. His face, visible through the taxi window to the 3 crew members who happen to be near the road, is the face of a man recalibrating everything he thought he knew about how the world works. He is gone. Back in the canyon, scene 42 rolls in the last 20 minutes of the morning light window. It is imperfect, it is rushed, but it is done. The camera operator captures something in the dust and the angled light that nobody planned, the kind of thing that only happens when 78 tired people decide, collectively, to work harder than the morning requires. The news reaches London before the lunch break. Halsey's version is creative differences and scheduling conflicts. But the first AD has already spoken to 3 people in the industry, and those 3 people speak to 6 more, and by the time Halsey lands at Heathrow, the accurate version of events has preceded him. He was fired from a Charles Bronson production for showing up late 3 mornings in a row and standing in a hotel bathrobe while 78 crew members waited in the desert. He does not work on a major film production again. Not the following year, not the year after. Within 18 months he is back in television. Within 3 years he is not in the industry at all. But that is not the end of the story. Because the night Halsey leaves, Charles Bronson finds the production accountant after dinner. He asks one question: how much to rebuild a small house in the Tabernas area? The accountant gives him a number. Bronson writes a check from his own account, hands it over, says 3 words: make it happen. He instructs the accountant to tell Alejandro it is a production housing allowance, a standard clause for local crew on long shoots. He says it matter-of-factly, the way you might explain a coffee order. Then he says goodnight and goes to his trailer. He does not tell the director. He does not tell the other producers. He does not tell Alejandro. The next morning, Alejandro drives the production van at 4:30. He loads cable. He drives the 40 kilometers of unpaved road. He does not know yet. He will not know for nearly a decade until a retired accountant sitting in a bar in Madrid tells the story to a journalist who almost doesn't believe it. When the journalist contacts Bronson's office for a comment, the response is one sentence: "Mr. Bronson has nothing to say about that." Which is exactly correct. Here is what they never put in the profiles. Charles Bukinski was born in Ehrenfeld, Pennsylvania, in 1921. The 11th of 15 children. His father, a Lithuanian coal miner, died when Charles was 10 years old. 10. He went into the mine himself. A boy in the dark, swinging a pick, feeding a family. One winter, he wore his sister's dress to school because there was nothing else. He flew 25 combat missions as a B-29 tail gunner in World War II. He came home and washed dishes in Atlantic City, picked onions in California, stumbled into a theater group in Philadelphia, not because he loved art, but because the room was heated and they paid $1.50 per show. He changed his name from Bukinski to Bronson because it sounded less foreign. He didn't speak English without an accent until he was in his 20s. He knew exactly what it cost to wake up at 4:30 in the morning and drive 40 kilometers on an unpaved road to do a job that a man in a bathrobe thought was beneath his attention. He had been every one of those 78 people. He had been Alejandro. He remembered what it was to have nothing, to say it without complaint, and to go back to sleep in the van. That is why he wrote the check, not out of charity, out of recognition. In a 1975 interview, asked about his approach to filmmaking, Bronson said, "I don't like people who waste other people's time. Time is the one thing nobody can give back." Chato's Land was released in 1972 to strong box office returns. It is now regarded as one of the tighter westerns of its era. The canyon sequence, shot in the last 20 minutes of a compromised morning, is cited specifically by film critics for its unusual light quality. Nobody who watches it knows what it cost to get there. Charles Bronson passed away in August 2003. He was 81 years old. He left behind a body of work that defined a genre and a generation. The vigilante films he made, Death Wish above all, created a blueprint that Hollywood still follows today. John Wick, Taken, every quiet, lethal man who protects the people others overlook. They all carry his DNA. But the real monument is smaller than any of that. It is a rebuilt house in Tabernas. It is two local workers whose wages were quietly doubled out of an actor's personal fee. A fact that only emerged years later, almost by accident. It is 78 people who got to use the morning light they had woken up at 4:30 to earn. He never asked for credit. He never expected thanks. He came from a place where men did what needed doing and kept moving, and he never let Hollywood talk him out of that. Silence is a source of great strength. Grit lasts forever. If this story moved you, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and leave a comment below. Tell us, when was the last time someone with real power used it quietly? For someone who would never know, share it. Pass it on.